Okay, here we go. Uh, Hello, good evening, and assalamu alaikum. And this is myself, Adnan Akib. So I hope you all are doing very good. And let me introduce myself. I'm myself Adnan Akib from Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman Maritime University, PML second batch. My ID is 19211 025. So the topic of my presentation is Incoterm 2020 and the missed opportunity for the next version. So first of all, we will know about the sequences of the presentation. The first one is the introduction, and then methodology, the conceptual discourse, a literature review. After that, assessment and findings, and then analysis, and the final one is the conclusion of the presentation. So first of all, we will know about the basically talk about the introduction. So in the introduction term, first of all, we need to know about what is Incoterm. Okay, so Incoterm defines the obligation, risk, and cost, and the buyer and seller must incur when goods are exchanged. They are the accepted method of for expressing these details in standardized and in forcible way. Basically, a dealing between the buyer and the seller, the cost, risks, and etc. etc. Whatever. For more details, if I want to say the if I want to say the Incoterms basically defines obligation, risks, cost, and the buyer and the seller must incur when goods are exchanged. And there are the accepted method of expressing these details in a standardized and enforceable way. And after that, there are moreover the new version of Incoterms are issued by the ICC when deemed it necessary to account for new trade realistic and foster trade growth Incoterms in 2020, the latest version replacing Incoterm 2010. And moreover, this research uses construct clarity theory to analyze both the individual Incoterm rules as well as the overall rule set. It aims to determine if the rules offer all options for realistic trade situation ambitiously. So issues were identified in Incoterm 2020 using this analysis. The writer synthesized this missed opportunity and proposed improvements for a future version of Incoterm, which one is expected about 2030, the Incoterm 2030. And also Incoterms rules are intended to add clarity between contracting parties from different backgrounds by standardizing obligations, risks, and cost in an adherent manner. They must therefore be precise, clear, and ambiguous to the effective way. Moreover, if Incoterms rules have issued, it lead to insufficiency and complication in trade for buyers and sellers. The researchers also aims to identify issues and propose improvements to maximize precision and effectiveness of the rules. Okay, so this one is was the introduction of part in this presentation, and after that we will know about the background study of the research. So Incoterms are trade terms. These are published by ICCB. ICCB means International Chamber of Commerce, that define obligations, cost, risks, and international sales contracts. And the new version are issued periodically to reflect changes in trade practices. So Incoterms 2020 is the current version of replacing Incoterm 2010. So in this presentation, we will analyze whether Incoterms 2020 adequately covers all possible trade scenarios and whether the individual rules are clear and unambiguous. So there is a lack of in-depth academic research on the Incoterms. Existing literature mostly consists of commentary and options rather than critical analysis. Incoterms are legally accepted worldwide to concisely define buyer and seller responsibilities. Choosing the right Incoterms simply negotiate and clarify cost and risks. In the previous research, identify issue with ambitious language and inconsistent use of Incoterms showing a need for precision. A lack of understanding also causes this kind of problem. So in this paper, we use construct clarity theory to analyze both the overall Incoterm framework and individual rules. This holistic approach examines definitions, context, overlap between rules and logical coherence. So this analysis identifies also ambiguous and inconsistencies in Incoterm 2020. It also shows the framework does not fully cover all possible trade scenarios. So in the background, provide the context on Incoterm and past research, introduce the analysis methodology and outline what the paper set out to examine and suggest for future improvement. Does this help summarize the key background points? Okay, so now we're going to the next slide. So the next slide is all about the research questions. So from this research analysis, there are some few questions that the questions shows in the screen, like, are the Incoterms rules completely clear or and ambitious in defining all aspects of obligations, risk and cost between the buyer and seller? Or the second one is, does the Incoterms rules offer all sensible or realistic options for trade movement, and are they complete and correct without ambiguity? For lack of clarity in defining the obligations, risks and cost for the buyer and seller within each rules? These are the research questions from the introduction part. So now let's go and talk about the methodology part. So first of all, the research method, here the research methodology used in this paper is a construct clarity theory. The theory was employed to analyze both the individual Incoterm rules and the overall rule set to determine if the rules offer all options for realistic trade situation ambitiously. And here also the researchers choose the approach as there is no simple research theory or methodology that can cover both the obligations, risks, and cost of Incoterms rules. So the source of data. So the source of data, the sources of data including a literature review of published notes like industry, magazine article, blogs, and other opinions-based sources. So additionally, it refers to a serious dearth of substantive research on Incoterms. The author also cites specific articles and conference proceedings such as those by Vogt and Davis, Stafton, Pendergast, and Demille, and so on. So these sources contribute to the analysis and discussion of the Incoterms rules. So moving to the next slide. So source of data analysis and presentation. So first of all, sorry. So in the presentation point, the source of data analysis and presentations are literature review of previous academic publications in Incoterms, analysis of the language and provision of Incoterm 2020 rules themselves, discussion of various reported cases and indicated where Incoterms were incorrectly or misunderstood in practice as cited in some of the literature. And the fourth one is a reference to general concept and finding from the other logistics and supply chain management research on topics like cost, risks, documentations, requirement, etc. But no direct data from this source. And the final one is a proposal of alternative rules and framework based on their analysis of issue and missed opportunity with the 2020 version. Moving to the next slide. Now we will talk about the literature review. So here the literature review. So in this paper, the literature review, there is a very little formal research that has been done directly on Incoterms itself. The authors conducted a thorough literature search across multiple databases and found only a handful of recent peer-reviewed journal articles on this topic. And moreover, many of the existing papers explore the changes between different versions of Incoterms like 2010 and 2000, etc., but do not provide a critical analysis. And also, several papers highlight issues with improved or inconsistent uses of Incoterm in trade contracts, indicating a lack of widespread understanding and training is suggested to address this. And here researcher also looks at how the choice of Incoterm affects factors like logistics cost, risk allocation, and the price of goods. Incoterms are not always well understood by those negotiating prices. And also papers examine conflicts between Incoterms and other trade definition practices like the Uniform Commercial Code in the US. Incoterms are found to be more precise. So different kind of case studies show example of misapplication of Incoterms, highlighting the need for clarity in the rules. So moving to the next slide. Um, this is conceptual discourse. So the paper includes concept clarity theory as a theoretical framework to evaluate the Incoterms rules, and also the paper applies concept clarity theory to analyze each individual Incoterms rules. The paper applies concept clarity theory to analyze each individual Incoterms rules, looking at aspects like precision on language, parsimony, clarify of context, scope, overlap with other rules. This identifies several issues with how risk insurance requirements, etc., are defined across different rules. The analysis also look at common article across all rules on aspects like delivery documentation, packaging, market, marks, notices, and it finds the language used in this article is often ambitious and lack precision. Looking holistically, the paper argues the rule set lack consistency in how key details like mode of transportation, risk transfer point, etc. are accessed across different kind of rules. And it also conclude the 2020 the version only provide incremental improvements and missed opportunities to better address issues of clarity, competency, and streamingly identified through the theoretical framework. So this conceptual discourse and theoretical analysis that from the basis of the of this paper arguments around hollow shortcoming of the hollow current Incoterms rules and opportunities for future improvement. The framework allows a structured, evidence-based critique and identifies areas the authors believes were missed by drafting committee. Moving to the next slide. Review of the existing literature. So there is a very little formal research that has been done directly on the Incoterm itself, according to the all terms. Many of the existing papers explored the changes between different versions of Incoterm like 2010 and 20, etc., but are not critical analysis. And also several papers highlight issue with improved or inconsistent uses of Incoterm in trade contracts. And the fourth one is research look at how the choice of Incoterm affects factors like logistic cost, risk allocation, and pricing of the goods. And also from this paper, that paper examine conflicts between Incoterm and trade definition practice, like the Uniform Commercial Code and US Commercial Incoterm are found to be more precise. All of these things are discussed in the previous slide. Um, they are also the review of the existing literature review. So in the research, there's a researcher gap I found in the literature review part. So what are the gaps I found in the literature review part. And Incoterm 2020 and the missed opportunity for the next versions. There are some gaps. First of all, the structural issue with the Incoterms rule that could be addressed through modification to how information is expressed in the rules. Things like being more consistent about how delivery, risk transfer, insurance, etc. are conveyed. The second one is opportunity to simplify and consolidate rules like EXW, FCA free on board into fewer rules by using additional modifiers. Failure to remove legacy water only rules like CFR, CIF, and instead convert them to all mode rules for consistency. And the fourth one is thin difference between some rules like DPU, DAP, DDP that create unnecessary proliferance of rules. The fifth one is lack of rules to cover all plausible logistic scenarios with the paper identify six scenarios that are not addressed. And the sixth one is issued with precision of language used across many rules terms like usual, normal that are ambiguous. And the last one is the missed opportunities in 2020 revision to better clarify overlaps and issues between EXW and FCA rules. Um, there are the rules. There is also more research gap, like I'm discussing over here, not included in the slide, like fail to address known issues with understanding and application of Incoterm in practice based on prior research. And the ninth one is not taking a big enough step change to promise a more simplified and complete Incoterm framework in 2030. So in the last point, we can say this key gap seems to be structural and clarity issues with the rules themselves, as well as not going for enough in revision to address known problem and simplify the overall framework. So that was the research gap I found in this um, uh, paper and showing the presentation slide. The next slide is all about the assessment and findings. The analysis both found individual rule and the overall Incoterm rule set could be enhanced. And in the researchers emphasized these findings into proposed improvement for a future updated version of Incoterm. So what assessments and findings I found in this paper? I found that the researcher used concept clarity theory to analyze each Incoterms rules individually as well as overall Incoterms the rule set. Sorry. And the final was the 11 rule set did not fully cover all possible trade scenarios. Some common scenarios were not directly addressed by any rule. And the third one is specifically the EXW or FCA rules shows ambiguity and were prone to misuse. The overlapping scenarios they address could better handle by consolidate rules. Um, the next one is this paper identified opportunities that were missed to further improve the Incoterm 2020 version. The updates were deemed incremental rather than substantial. And here the researchers also propose consolidating and streaming the rules of the future in Incoterm 2020 version. This included reducing rules and allowing for more flexibility through additional modifiers. The goal of the proposed changes was to make the rules more precise, parsimonious, comprehensive, and logically coherent while continuing to support international trade. So, in the last point, I can say the analysis found both individual rules and overall Incoterm rule sets could be enhanced. Their research emphasized this finding into proposed improvements for the future update of this Incoterm. I mean the Incoterm 2020, which and after that in the future which updates are coming across. Moving to the next slide. So here is the analysis part, and the analysis part has also been discussed. to the previous slide. So I'm also discussing some. There are some few points are different from the other slides, but most of the slides are similar. And moreover, in the analysis part, we can to say the researchers use concept clarity theory to analyze each Incoterms individual, which are highlighted in every slide because of the researchers use this kind of research tool for the purpose. And moving to the next slide, strategy. So in this point part, strategy part, the the strategies proposed in this paper for improving the Incoterm framework, including there are like five individuals. First of all, the structural changes. The paper suggested that structural changes are necessary to improve the precision of language and clarity of purpose in the Incoterm rules. It recommends avoiding ambiguous language and replacing imprecise terms with precise requirements suitable for legal contracts. The paper also suggested that if a rule is perspective to the point that a particular trade cannot comply with it, the buyer and the seller may modify the rules as a last resort. And the second one is simplification and standardization. The paper proposes simplifying the rules by eliminating redundant or overlapping rules and integrating water-only rules into general multimodal rules. It also suggests requiring modifiers to standardize key details across all rules, making them more consistent and easier to understand. The third one is extension of rules. The paper proposes extending the rules to cover all realistic test situations. It identifies scenarios that are not currently addressed by the rule and suggests creating new rules or modifying existing ones to ensure comprehensive coverages. The fourth one is clarity and competences. The paper emphasized the need to improve the clarity and competency of the Incoterm rules. It suggested that the rules should avoid ambiguous instances of terms like usual, normal, and customary, and replace them with precise requirements suitable for legal contracts. And the final one, incremental improvement. While the critiques the 2020 version of Incoterm for being an incremental improvement only, it suggested that substantial further improvement are possible. The paper also proposes practical changes for simultaneously extending and simplifying Incoterm for the 2030 version. So the last slide is about the conclusion part. So sorry. So in the conclusion part, I will like to say here the Incoterm 2020 rules using concept clarity theory to determine if the rules fully covered all potential test situation and if each individual's rules was clear and unambiguous. In the analysis found several issues with both the individual rules and overlapping Incoterm framework. Some rules lacked precision and clarity in how they define obligation, risk, and cost. There are also overlap and inconsistency between all of the rule sets. So the overall set of rules did not comprehensively cover all possible logistics scenarios for international trade. Some realistic situations had no applicable rules. So in this research, the researcher argues the ICC, International Chamber of Commerce, missed opportunity in Incoterm 2020 to address this issue and simplify, improve the rules. Opportunity included consolidating overlapping rules, using modifiers to add clarity, and ensuring all scenarios are addressed. And here, the finally in the paper, the author also proposed enchantment for a future version of Incoterm, including streamingly to just three main rules that are modified to specific important details in a standardized way. This could make the rule more flexible, reduce ambiguity, and fully cover all test scenarios. So finally, while Incoterm 2020 made improvements, the analysis will found it was still an incremental change that left room for further simplification and clarity in both individual rules and the overall framework, according to that author. So, thank you for listening me. Um, this was all about my presentation, and if you have any questions or and some recommendation for the betterment of this presentation, you can also comment, and obviously you are also most welcome. So thank you very much for listening my presentation. This is all about it. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.